um, hers will be executed, but not the contract, because we just got that template back from Hannah today.
The AA will be executed. She just getting back that contract today.
That's very interesting. It really does.
Yeah.
That's like.
Almost a drag.
Love it. Hey, Commissioner Scalzi, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
See ya.
Stress them that I'm actually. And I know, yes.
Are a bunch of people there in person, or are we just missing a lot of people today?
We have Commissioner Small, Commissioner Jackson, and Commissioner Bradley.
So-
Like, we'll do it, round up one or two more.
City official.
And I'm not scared everybody.
That's where our attorneys just accuse you.
So I can.
So we can do.
It's kind of hard to hear you guys, FYI.
How about now?
I'm gonna.
I think the rest of them.
Yes, so my feeling that she needs to try to get it done, and like you do better, and, okay, but.
Because I read like 1 through 5 of them, and I had tapped on the signature line so that it came out of PT, I could finish it, and I come out of PT, and I had an email that says the document is ready to review it, so I. And then I got, I think about 2 months later, I got an email. All of the same things that I read.
Well, ultimately with Shane, kind of getting, this is gonna be, I think, probably will require the attorneys to get a new contract.
Y'all sent me an email. Email thing, do not issue.
Did you just get an email from Commissioner? That's why that's just.
Well, I, it was like, I was so stupid. And like,
Yeah.
so I pulled it up on the other side and I got reading. Well,
It is definitely, they just make them pay their $2 to be.
Shani, that.
Shitty, yes.
Commissioner, WebEx is spinning. Yeah, Commissioner Daniel's autopilot is here, but he's not making sense.
So it's.
Not
She was just
making.
an old, like, right, you know, all that stuff out there. She's.
It's like your.
Oh, so he's not ready for this year.
Correct.
And there's like, and there's more people. I think we got like issues.
Hey, can you kick out Commissioner Daniel?
Just like.
It's low, but you're. You may want to hear some questions.
What's the.
Commissioner, hello. Commissioner, hello.
So we can hear you guys, but it's like, it's really kind of soft. It's really hard to tell what you're saying.
Just me or not?
Everybody who's talked so far.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it's far away, so I don't.
Is there anything we can do about that? We know that Commissioner Daniel is not going to be here. Commissioner Jackson is in the room with me, and we want to give Commissioner Truzilla and Commissioner Buckle just a minute because we've not heard from them that they are not coming, but we do have a forum, so we'll start shortly. And our chair is also in prayer, making sure that I conduct this meeting. I just heard from Commissioner Hornbuckle that he will be here late. What was it, the same? Did you guys all hear that Commissioner Nugent was named the recipient?
So Ms. Willis let that slip way before she was supposed to. Yeah, so we were at one of the budget town halls, and she like mentioned that he was gonna be this year's silver. Jim texts me, or
Don't tell anybody.
yeah, he emails me immediately. It's like,
No, very, very to it. I said,
she was up with nothing. I was like, my lips are sealed.
I'm in trouble. Goes to only like 40 governors, standards, whatever. And I don't know how I was. Seems like there's too many organizations. And Chuck just emailed me last week. Or we, somebody didn't need to. Whatever, and we're like, no, you know. And they're also super compulsion. And that got this article that we support talking about joining these events. And he's like, oh, okay, and then none of these was none of them is an announcement party, but we don't know. Who is playing? I can try to look at. Because you need to only get that that's already fun. I keep very sort of spread my support around, like to do a different organization each time. Right. Can somebody check in with Commissioner Truzilla? She is trying to log in, but control.
Are all the mics a problem to listen to on the other side? Mr. Spelcy or Hello? It's still kind of muted.
We're working on it. We will, until then we'll speak.
Before Glenn spoke up, that whole conversation just sounded very garbled. It wasn't very audible.
Okay, is this audible? I now have my mic on in front of my mouth. Can you understand it? Okay.
Yeah, it's just coming through kind of choppy. If anybody talks over anyone else, it's choppy all over the place. So we couldn't understand anything when you guys were talking at the same time.
So we are,
Just trying to log.
yeah, I just.
Honestly, it sounds like you're being picked up by a mic that's far away from you. It doesn't sound like it normally does with your mic right in front of you.
It's from us just chit chatting with each other.
Actually, is the mic on the TV? Is that one? Thank you, Sean. Is this better, guys? Hello, Commissioner. Everybody check your mics that are near you, make sure they're turned on. I call this meeting of the Allocations Committee to order at 4:40 p.m. Welcome, everyone. We have a full agenda, but only one voting item. The first item on our agenda is approval of the September 5th, 2024 Allocations Committee meeting. Is there a motion? A motion. We have a motion from Commissioner Jackson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Trezella. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposition? Motion has carried unanimous. Okay, welcome everybody. Commissioner Hornbuckle will be joining us a little bit late. Commissioner Daniel is unable to join us today. We have, I'm sure you've seen from your materials, a pretty full agenda today, talking about our upcoming guidelines work and also wrapping up on culture of value and our staff updates. But we don't have any major voting items. Last year, you'll recall that we got our work done early, and so we skipped the October meeting. But we decided, given the work that needs to be done on guidelines, it would be a good idea to have this meeting and let staff introduce us to what they have noted, what they think we might need to examine on the guidelines, and also what they have kept notes about as we worked through the funding programs this year. And so what I'd like you to do for each topic is let whoever the presenter is get completely through the presentation. If we are missing anything, this would be a good time to call it to the staff's attention to add those things. And then we can expect a pretty full, robust discussion at our November meetings. We have a little bit of time on this, but it's also good to be sure that we give the staff heads up and we are not at the last minute just when we need to approve the guidelines, remembering something that we wanted to address. So no fear, no problem. If you haven't thought about this in a minute, you still have plenty of time to bring up those ideas both at our next meeting, and also remember that you can always email staff. Don't email the whole committee. We want to stay. We do not want to run afoul of the Open Meetings Act, but you can email staff with your questions or thoughts if something comes up after the meeting. So with that preamble, our first briefing is on the proposed guideline changes for Arts Activate 2026, and Julia will be briefing this item, and then she will open it up for questions at the end of her briefing.
Hey everyone, Happy New Year. It's effectively October 1st, and also for those celebrating the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, Shana Tova, to everybody and our neighbors who might be celebrating that. We're going to celebrate this a little early. I wish I had a countdown clock, but the point of celebrating New Year, at least in what we're doing in our team, is thinking about what wonderful things happened last year, what things that happened last year in our funding team that maybe were not so wonderful, and we have an opportunity to correct, change, and update. So as staff, we have been thinking, what would we like to do differently this year? And in these slides, you'll see some of our ideas, that the ones that need to make it on the paper, and then we have even more that we'll be working on the back end to make the experience of artists working with us and you working with us and our internal structure even smoother for next year. But before we leave some New Year's celebration, the most important thing to say is thank you for your service last year. Thank you for continuing to be on this committee this year. I won't speak for all the other committees because I don't have to sit in them, but I would imagine that this is a lot of work. And I know how many hours that each of you have put in, and I am incredibly grateful. So before we do any talk of what we're changing for next year, I think it's thank you very much, especially to our chairs. Just have been a brilliant team to work with this year, so thank you. All right, getting into Arts Activate for 2026. As a little bit of context, Arts Activate is our, I've used the analogy that was given to me by an intern. We have three bears for the program. We have a Goldilocks and three bears situation where we have a micro grant, which is culture of value. We have a Mama Bear program, which serves a whole lot more people, but slightly smaller money. And the Papa Bear program is COP. So Arts Activate is our middle one. This has the fewest barriers to entry, meaning that we take a lot of applications from individual artists, artist collectives, 501c3s that are not necessarily in the arts. They want to do an arts project. And so therefore it makes a lot of sense that this gets the most applicants out of any program, any funding program at OAC. Last year, her work supported 66 organizations and 66 individual artists for 132 projects, which was really exciting. What we learned from last year as we looked at all of the final reports coming in and we're talking to a lot of artists is that a couple things. First, because there are fewer barriers to entry, we have a lot of new artists every single round, which is wonderful. And it means that we really need to think about orientation time every single round for new folks. It's also a significant ask of panelist time, and we need new and excited and enthusiastic panelists every single time. We also have to work hard to make sure that every round we are really clear about what our expectations are from the artists and what their expectations should be from us. One of the biggest things that we work on every time is that payment is a reimbursement and it is not an upfront check. So we work on those deliverables and we try and make those as clear as we possibly can. So that's one thing that when you see an updated draft of the guidelines, this is why, is because while a lot of folks are returning to us every time, there will also be a lot of new friends every single round, and we want to make sure that we're being as clear and forthcoming with information as we possibly can. Second thing we looked at was that we have reached a wonderful problem, that we have a record high number of applicants basically every time, which means that to keep the workload sustainable for staff and the funding possible within our budget, we are funding fewer than 40% of projects every round, which is pretty low. Organizations had an even lower funding percentage of that because their award amounts get higher. So when we can fund 2 individual artists for $16,000 or 1 organization for $16,000, it's tricky. So we don't have the world's perfect fix for that just yet. We have some ideas that I'll share with you in a second that might help with that. We may decide that having a lower percentage rate for this is okay, but it is something that's on our minds. We would love that number, obviously, to be higher. Another thing we learned is that while all districts were represented in at least 1 project every round somehow, most artists are applying to do projects in areas that are either historically important to their art or their art form, or they're applying in their home districts. We haven't quite nailed it yet in incentivizing people to go all over the city, and so there are some things that we can think about to do that. And finally, one really wonderful thing that we've seen over and over again is that Arts Activate has been a wonderful entry point for artists to learn about other programs like CAP, Culture Value, and even grow up into COP. So we are really grateful to be able to continue to run this program at the volume and the speed that we do, because it introduces folks to ways to get involved throughout the city. So that was last year. What's happening for 2025 right now is that round 1 awardees are working through their contracts. If an applicant was not funded and requested a score sheet from us, almost all of those have gone out, and I really, really am grateful to my staff for doing the world's speediest, well, still correct work on that. So thank you to Kayla and itself. And what's happening this week and next week is we are in process of scheduling and completing requested one-on-one conversations with round 1 applicants that were not funded that want to come back. So that we can have all of those before round 2 applications close, and they can have the benefit of a brainstorming partner and their scores from last time if they'd like to try again with the same project. So fingers crossed that we will see some projects that we weren't able to support last time come back for round 2. So now we're thinking the year ahead, and these are some ideas that we have for 2026. Not all of these are going to show up in the draft of the guidelines that you'll see, and some of them are bigger swings that you may ask us to move with or not. What these are is our brainstorming pile, of which we will work with you over the next couple of months to pick the good ones and put those into the guidelines. So please don't interpret this as we will make all of these changes immediately. These are the best we could come up with looking with the information that we just shared with you and reading through all these final reports and talking to a lot of artists. So first thing, this is to do with that 40% acceptance rate that we really like to increase. First thing is COP organizations often are competing with organizations that don't have access to that COP funding. Additionally, one thing that takes a lot of staff time and a lot of explaining is we have challenges determining projects that are quote in scope of COP versus in scope of Arts Activate. We are not allowed as a city staff to fund the same project twice. Counts as double dipping. Once something is in the scope of COP, it's considered done, and we can't give more dollars to that. And so what some COP organizations have done to get more funding is either pull something out of their COP scope or try and create a project from scratch that they wouldn't have done to get it into Arts Activate. And while neither of those are anybody trying to be nefarious or in any way like cheat the system, it is making it harder for organizations that don't have access to that COP funding to compete. What our rules say right now is that organizations currently receiving over 100K can't apply to Arts Activate at all. That only takes out about 12 organizations out of the pool. And one thing that staff has been talking and playing with is dropping that number to 70K, which is about the middle range of the award that we give. So this would mean that about half of the organizations would not be able to apply as opposed to only the top 12. The other opportunity that we could have is we could say, okay, COP organizations that have capped out by revenue and so therefore lost funding this year, there were 3 organizations that fell in that boat, they could apply to Arts Activate to help cover that difference. We've been thinking about several options there, but where we are leaning is potentially dropping that number to if you're receiving 70K or under. That's sort of the first idea. Second idea is what we learned even just from round 1 of this last one was we changed the scoring last year to take the cultural plan adjudication away from all OEC staff and put it to panel. That has turned out to be a really great idea. Our panelists really like it. It gives them a moment to connect with the cultural plan in a really detailed way. It lets us teach about it. That was great. What is less so is that staff points are now only 25 rather than 30. And so if there was a panelist who had a bee in their bonnet about their project or a panel or an application that was particularly flashy, that one may now outweigh some of the logistics portions that are really important. Like, do you have a budget? Did you turn in your final report last year on time? Those sorts of things. And so there may be a moment that staff may like to add 5 points of admin back to allow us to score higher projects with higher executability, so that solid projects can still get through even if they aren't immediately the most flashy at panel. The third idea that we could change to, again, look at that 40% funding rate is there were 11 organizations or individuals who were funded twice. We could allow folks or organizations only to apply once. We could also build in bonus points for applicants who attended one of those one-on-one scorecard review sessions to sort of support returning applicants getting funded that weren't funded in rounds prior for coming back with a better application. So that if it was there was basically a tie between somebody who'd been funded before and somebody who had not, but had consistently shown up to review conversations, we would have an opportunity to reward that. So that is one option we could take. Okay, the next idea is that our current typology points, one thing we did last year was you get 2 points rather than 0 for being in the arts district. So that you get 2 points for putting in a location at all, and then it scales up. That's really helpful. What we have also found is that we still don't have a really high volume of projects. While that helps, it didn't really incentivize people to go to the arts district. They were about the same, but it also didn't incentivize people to go very far out to districts that are less artist heavy. And so right now we are de-incentivizing places that may be historically relevant and culturally relevant to projects. Like, for example, there was a project last year that wanted to talk about the history of the first gay bar in Dallas during a musical. That happens to be downtown. So he was very tied to this very particular location that was going to be very few points. So we're effectively penalizing that, but we're not incentivizing people to go out to other districts when they do have the choice. We had talked a little bit, actually not a little bit, we talked extensively last year about using the equity impact assessment tool, which most other departments use. We could do that to effectively remove the penalty from being in historically relevant but not arts light areas, while still not penalizing folks for trying to go out to new areas. We don't have a great enough reward incentive net to push people out into other slate districts. Okay, and finally, we've learned that not all artists have their own social media following, and a lot are asking for marketing help at a volume that we are not prepared to provide. We do have a communications department, but the process for marketing right now has been that if someone creates the marketing, puts the OSC logo on it, and then puts our hashtag or our handle, we will reshare it, which is really helpful. But it is not a standard place to go find every arts activity. And so one thing we would like to do for 2026 is make putting your event on Go See DFW, which is free and available to artists as part of Dallas Morning News, make that mandatory as your marketing deliverable too, rather than just giving us a flyer. Because what that will do is create a repository that people at Dallas can search, and it'll give staff a place to say, here's where you can go to find all of the information about all the projects. We're really excited about that one and hope that you are too. I think that is the easiest of any of the things that we've proposed, because that will make it a lot more obvious to the community what Arts Activate does, and help artists with a really clear spot to go for marketing that doesn't take significant investment or investment from staff. So with that, I will pause. There were 5 of these ideas. I'm happy to take questions on any of the 5. I'm also happy to take your thoughts on ones that you'd like to really keep or really scrap. Commissioner Spellacy.
Okay, so can you, this is the second page, right? Can you go back to the first page? So I think the first one is a good idea. I think just kind of reducing that award amount would be helpful so our larger organizations are not kind of double dipping into this. Actually most of these all look pretty okay to me. Okay, go back to the second page now. There was one thing I had a question about. So I'm not totally sure about the equity impact assessment tool. I would need to get more info about how that would work and what that would look like. But I love the idea of having everybody do the Go See DFW. I think that's perfect. I also think that we should cap people to only getting one award per year through Arts Activate. I think it's grown enough at this point that, and we have enough applications that that we should just kind of make that part of the guideline. You can get one award per year, and that's it. My question, and you may not be able to answer this right now, is if we do make some of those adjustments where we reduce the 100K down to 70K, what organizations would that impact, and how much are we talking? Like, are there certain organizations that would fall into that window that have been getting Arts Activate every single year, so they would be taking effectively a funding hit for this? And do we have kind of something in place to signpost that for them?
That's a great question. It would impact about, and this is if funding stayed the same, it would impact 13 organizations that get between 70 and 100,000 from us. And several of these do often apply for Arts Activate, but they do not always, they don't always get it because of those scope overlaps and the fact that by the time we get into these really top tiers of revenue, we're only accepting 1 or 2 projects in each tier. Last time we had 1 Group C project and 1 Group D project. So it's we're wrestling with that too, is the short answer. Is does it feel like we're revoking funding? Maybe is the short answer. So, and yet, it is in fact blocking other organizations of the similar size and need that are also not able to get that funding.
Along those same lines, do any other cities that are similar to us have a policy in place where you can only get funding once and you just have to pick the best program that's for you?
I hadn't heard of that. I know that we've talked to San Antonio and Austin, and they allow you to apply as many as you qualify for in the guidelines, which is until this point, that's sort of where we've lived too. But it's a good question.
This would be interesting because to me, it's almost as if it would incentivize some art groups to look elsewhere. I mean, it's an idea that we could bring a lot more new people in. And then while I'm talking real quick, the equity impact assessment tool, I've slept since we last looked at this. It's been a minute. That's the tool that I really looked at pretty in depth last year, correct?
It is indeed. Yep.
Okay. Has there been any updates made to this tool?
I don't know where we will be by 2026. I know
Okay.
we did it every 2 years.
Because I'll have a big problem with that, with all the research that just showed that it was seriously flawed. And my councilwoman and I spent so much time looking at it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
But I'm in favor of the page 1 as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Chisholm. Commissioner Hall, I see your hand, but Commissioner Jackson has been trying to speak for several minutes. So I'm going to call on her first, and then you can go after that. Will that be acceptable?
I just wanted to ask clarification on this. Did I hear you correctly that if we leave it at 100,000, 12 organizations, but if we drop down to 70, it's now 13?
Oh, no. Thanks for that clarification question. If we leave it at 100, it cuts out 12 organizations. If we drop it to 70, it cuts out 20.
Okay.
It's approximately the median award out of our 56.
Okay. No, 13 years.
Sorry, 13 more organizations.
13 more.
I'm sorry. Thank you for asking.
And then before we go to Commissioner Lama, that's the to apply, but it's not that many organizations.
The organizations on this list that have received it in the last 2 years would be GDYO, the Nasher, which now that they apply for is definitely in scope of their COP. Teatro Dallas, Junior Players, Dallas Theater Center, Carmia, and the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum.
Commissioner Holmes, remind me.
Thank you. So just before we go on further, I'm still having some difficulty hearing you, Commissioner. Okay, so it's not just me, but just FYI. I just want to make sure that what Emmanuel sent yesterday, right, on slide 7, there were only 4 items, with the first one being capped at 50,000, but today we're seeing 6. Is that right? With the 50K change to 70K?
So so between what you sent, so what Emmanuel sent was a draft. And after talking it with the team today, 50K seemed too drastic. So we bumped it back up to 70, and we added that last one about go see together.
And we'll ask the staff send the updated briefing slides out to you after this, to everyone after this meeting.
Forward, do you think that you could just like highlight or show us what is different, what has been added? Because I was going off of the 50 and just the 4, and then I see today and I'm thinking something's not right. I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, may I make a suggestion, Commissioner Holmes?
Thank you.
We're not gonna dive into these very deeply today. So the staff the revised briefing so that you have it for your sort of post-meeting review of what was discussed. But then what we will really be digging into deeply we'll really be digging deeply into discussing this at our next meeting. And hopefully we can have those briefing slides a day or so early so that you have plenty of time to.
And the materials that we receive, you know, one day when we're reviewing it in the meeting the next day, if anything has changed, I think just as a courtesy, it'd be nice to say, you didn't see this yesterday, but here it is today. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to make the suggestion that when you bring this back to us in November, on each of these points where they actually will impact specific organization, we might add a column to the briefing slide. So for example, in this point number 1, either add a slide or parenthetically put in that first line, not every organization that would be precluded from applying, because that would be a long list, but this would preclude these 8 organizations who previously awarded. You know, so that we can look to that question that has been raised by Commissioner Spellsey about what the impact is on the local. So I think that would be helpful because it'll save you some time and every just for answer to that question. Any other questions on what Julia has presented so far? Oh, Commissioner Holomo.
Yes, I have one more question, and it's not always a popular one, but did y'all ever revisit maybe not awarding the full amount for Arts Activate so that more people can get something?
We think about that a lot. It is not, it is a good thought. It is a valuable one. Problem is that especially for individual artists, 5,000 or 6,000 goes fast. And for many of these awardees, we are the only funding. And so if the scope that you propose is only possible with $8,000, let's say, with what you put in front, it's $8,000, and we come back and say, congratulations, you've got 4. They can very reasonably come back to us and say, okay, but I can only do half the project that I put forward. And then that half means we've fundamentally changed the project that was reviewed by panelists, that was approved, and that went through the whole process. And if panelists had seen the half project, they might have selected somebody else. And so what we're trying to avoid doing is fundamentally changing the scope of the project for an artist. And what we don't want to do is say, okay, here's the money you want, certainly, but what would the lowest possible dollar that you could do it for? Because then that turns us into sort of a race to the cheapest projects, which isn't really where we want to be either, as we talk about equity and paying artists a living wage. So I hear you, and we have done it. We did it in round 3 of last year, so that we could get more folks in the door, but we only did it to organizations that had other sources of funding other than us.
Just a reminder, that is an actual funding rather than guideline question. That is the analysis that we apply when the recommended funding is brought to us rather than guideline. Commissioner Loma, I see your hand, but Commissioner Trezillo is waiting to speak, so let's hear from her first, and then we'll circle back.
Okay, well, I was a follow-up question to what was stated, but
Oh, you can go ahead.
okay, so I was going to say, on the applications, thank you, Commissioner Trezella. On the applications, isn't there a place when it comes to the budgeting that they have to identify where they're also going to get other funds, though?
Yes, but we don't make it mandatory that you get some. It's extra points if you do, but it's not mandatory.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Trezilla.
I did want to just make one comment. I really appreciate the marketing. I do think a lot of these small groups struggle with that, and they put all this work into doing their project, and then very few people might show because lack of marketing. I would like to see if there is anything that maybe we can do in the future, whether it be a pre-recorded thing, and I'd be more than happy to help you with it, that gives them the ideas of where to go, what to do for marketing.
Thank you. Yeah, we don't offer resources like that right now.
I think I did a talk to Salmon's Arts a couple weeks ago, just talking about another Giving Friday or Giving Day, whatever it was. But it just dawned on me that, for us, well, at least for me, it's common knowledge because this is what I do every day. But for a lot of people, they don't even know where to even begin. Where do I go to let the Dallas Morning News know about it? Where do I go to put out a press release about it, etc.?
Great, thank you.
Okay, can we move on now to the next briefing item if there are no more questions? I suspect we will have questions about the COP recommended changes. So we promised you all a quick meeting today. I'm revoking that promise because it is now 5:14 and we are on the first agenda item. So is everyone good if we move on to the briefing on the COP? Okay, great. Julie, you have the floor again.
Okay, so as context, last year we had 52. COP has the most barriers to entry because we have really extensive application process and revenue and employee requirements and scope requirements. So by the time you jump through all of those hurdles, basically we have a really high acceptance rate, especially compared to our other programs. As you recall, we turned away 2 organizations this year. What we learned last year from looking at, we're starting to look at final reports, but mostly we're talking to organizations, is that the funding award amounts aren't always clear to applicants and don't seem to have specific goals for increases and decreases written in the guidelines. We also learned that organizations in the program often overlap with other funders, and so especially with when this is due, there is a Texas Commission on the Arts application that is due. TACA is often due around it. And so there is room for OAC, TACA, and APAC collaboration, which we are now doing. So we are having chats with those folks to make sure our calendars are not going to swamp our organizations for 2025 or 2026. We also heard that the reason that folks keep coming back is operational funding, because that is different than any other funding that folks are able to find in the city, and actually a lot of national planning too. Additionally, we have specifically heard from people this year that there are funders that they have consistently relied on for supporting the arts that now have transitioned to other really important causes. And so there are fewer funders out there right now that are major supporting the arts than there were pre-pandemic. What that means to us is that this program continues to grow in terms of interested applicants every year with more extensive and funding needs. If that means we need more panelists, more staff, more of you, and it's a higher ask of organizations to put together even more beautiful full applications to show us all the. For 2025, what's happening now? Funding decisions have been emailed. They are getting their scope of work with the giant red bold text on it that says City Council still has to approve this. But please send us your scope of work for the year finalizing it, so we can send that to cities. Applicants will be given score sheets and an opportunity for conversation with staff and potentially their commissioner if you're interested in that, if you have time, before those COP applications in 2026. But those are a back burner until we get to city council. At the end of October, we will have orientation for 2025. At the end of orientation, there will be a survey to ask folks what they think about COP and give them an opportunity to express their feedback, positive or negative, about our guideline process. And we'll go ahead and start those contracts as soon as it's passed by City Council for 2025. We will also, as soon as it's possible, be sending our first checks. We don't need to talk about this too much because you saw it last year, but this is an example of what a score sheet will look like. We'll include their panel score, their admin score, their total score, and then comments. And then for organizations that got below an 85, we'll have some personalized feedback or suggestions. When they get those, if they request them, we'll CC you their question. Okay, here are the things for 2026 that we are thinking on. Again, this is our biggest possible spaghetti on the wall list. We will not necessarily do all of them. This first one is one that we are pretty serious about and excited to bring to you. And that is, we'd really, really like to change this program to go back to being multi-year, specifically 3-year. What we're finding is that this is every year a consistent ask, and it's a huge ask, especially with small organizations, to put together this application, especially in a busy time of year, especially competing with other grants. It's also a huge ask of panelists. We really scramble to get enough really wonderful qualified panelists because panelists who serve as employees or artists as part of these COP organizations can't be panelists for conflicts of interest. And so it is really challenging to put together panelists that are going to invest 20 to 30 hours of their time in 1 month to review these, show up in person for the Q&A, and give really thoughtful responses to all the organizations that these train. So what we'd like to propose is having this round of 2026 be the first year of a 3-year COP. So the first year will look pretty much exactly like it always has. Big long application, video, Q&A session. Years 2 and 3, however, you only need to turn in information for your administrative scores. So those are monthly reports and audits. You would only get scored on your admin score, and we might have an opportunity, to make small funding adjustments, go down, or have a check with your commission, depending on how those are going. But you wouldn't have to do the full application again for another 2 years, and your funding would be guaranteed year over year for the whole 3 years that you were in part of the program. Here's the things that we think would be really helpful about this. One is it's stable planning for organizations over a multi-year period. You take us from just knowing how much you're getting this year, and then maybe it goes down because your revenue went slightly down the next year, and then maybe it goes up. This gives you stable planning over a 3-year period. Second is it really allows us, we heard you, we're not thrilled about how little we were able to use admin scores this year. This allows us to really focus on those for 2 years, years 2 and 3, and allow you to get bonus awards if you're doing a really great job with running your organization and turning those things back into the city. It also allows staff time. Right now, we are running in sort of a reactive way of COP of what is the next thing we have to do. This would give us time to do bigger changes without disrupting organizations, giving people lots of notice and allowing for more feedback from those organizations. It also makes it possible that we do this once every 3 years rather than once a year, have more time to recruit panelists, have less panelists burnout, have less of a crazy summer for you. Once every, 1 year, every 3, rather than every single summer. And it would really help us be able to invest more time in relationships with these organizations rather than be tracking their data. So that's the big one. That I'm sure you'll have questions about. I'm happy to answer them. It probably is the biggest and most important thing. Second thing is less of a big deal. We just have noticed over the past couple of years, especially with COVID, it's really hard for organizations to guess their revenue year over year. And so organizations, especially at lower tiers, are the ones that are hitting their funding caps with just one challenging year. And then getting an $8,000 and $10,000 cost award deduction. And the cultural plan actually has higher funding caps than we might be allowed to use. And so we could keep folks in their same peer groups, but just basic groups, basically, so that we would have this happen less often. Okay. This is pretty small, but we need to clarify how we use hotline next year in the guidelines. And so we will be adding language about all main programming needs to be open to the public for residents, because that helps us justify that with data and future. And also have a marketing plan for this one. We are running into the issue that several organizations are assuming that OAC marketing will cover every event they do because they're part of COP. That is just not sustainable of what we can do as staff, or we can ask our marketing folks to do. So what we will need to do is clarify, we can amplify your marketing and lean on those ideas, but we cannot create new materials for you. And that has been a misunderstanding that we need to look to.
Okay, questions? Mr. Jackson.
Organization apply every year, and should still.
Chair, we can't hear what she's saying, so I don't know if the mic's not working right or.
Can you hear me now?
Short answer is no.
Just
Okay, is that better at all? Yes and no.
Can you guys hear her at all? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, we can't hear her, it's very choppy. So maybe you could just summarize what the question was or something?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Yeah,
Accountability.
walk through what the accountability would look like if we don't have a year-to-year, application process. So how will we monitor and also hold organizations accountable? And then I'm assuming maybe there's something in that administrative support that might be a part of that. So can you take that out a little bit, punch that out?
Definitely. Okay, so for those that couldn't hear very well, what Commissioner Jackson was asking is how do we keep people accountable if we're not seeing applications from them every year? What do we do in those off years? Couple things. One is, as part of the admin score, they have to turn in monthly reports every year. So that is part of it, is we're gonna know what they're doing by what they're turning in on those monthly reports. The second thing is we'll be able to ask them for an updated scope for the year. in April, just like we would in a full application. We just wouldn't need to ask for the Q&A, the video, the history of your organization, the leadership. We would just need a list of, okay, Dallas Theater Center, what are the 4 plays that you're going to do this year? The other thing the admin score looks at are things like your audit, your financial audit. We will still be requesting those. We will still be looking at your board diversity, your staff diversity. You still have to turn in that stuff. You just don't have to go through the whole, basically, you don't have to tell the story of your organization to new people.
Okay, one follow-up question. So if they turn all that in and they're not, doing what they say they're going to do, then what happens? How are we going to be able to adjust that?
We can definitely make funding. We would basically say at the front of year 1, here is your funding that you will get over the next 3 years. If you do not comply with these things, we will make cuts as necessary, year over year, X percentage or something. Versus if you are able to do this, and we can even do like bonus points, basically. It would all be based on your attitudes.
Okay.
And my apologies, I'm going to say that all 3 of your hands just went up at the same time because I don't remember the order that they popped up. And I'm going to start at the top of the screen with Commissioner Spellacy.
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple questions. So I'm fine with this. I think it takes some load off of the organization. I guess my question is, I would hope that if they are not in compliance with the regulations of the program, that they would still be able to be dropped should they not be in compliance, correct?
We can. I think we would certainly hope that when they sign that like 3-year contract, basically, we'd say this is on the condition that you remain in compliance.
Okay. Okay, my question then is mainly about funding. So are we saying that we just are, as long as they remain in compliance, we're guaranteeing that they will stay in the program for the next 3 years? Or are we giving them a guaranteed yearly award amount at the start of a 3-year term? Because to me, that would be a little bit dicier because you don't really know what's going to happen with the city's budget year on year and what's going to happen with HOT, like when we hit COVID, for instance. I mean, that there was a huge hit to HOT. So to me, it would be a little bit scary to give a guaranteed 3-year award when the city only runs, year on year fiscally.
I think that's a good point. I am going to pass that to Glenn.
So nothing would ever be written as guaranteed. We would set down, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. We would set a structure of how all this would work. This is very beginning, early planning stages and all of this, right? And this is part of the process. But everything would be pending appropriations. We would, as we go through our budgeting process with the city, we would then update our process as far as how we would allocate. The idea is to say, this is to create, you said it, a stable planning, as it were, but even in stable planning for any given organization, their budgets will change year over year. So it would be no different. We are just saying that we want to find a system that allows for more stability and better planning for an organization's fiscal health, essentially. But yes, that's a really great point. And all of those clarifications, we work on updating this particular change. That's what we're going to do.
I have one more question, but you can cycle back to me if you want to do that.
So just to, in other words, we might have some work to do. You're talking about not, we the committee, you're talking about not through handle review scoring process, except once every 3 years. So if the overall budget changed, let's say we had 6 million in year 1, and in year 2 we had 7 million, this committee would need how to spread out that 7 million based upon the scoring that you want that through the whole review process. Is that what you want to propose?
But the only change I make to what you just said is you'd actually be able to look at the scoring in year 2. right? Because people will still get a year 2 score on all their admin with the things
Gotcha.
that they're
But
updating.
you would be looking at the new admin score, but the old Palo scores. Can you have one Palo score every year?
And so, yeah,
So Commissioner Scalzi, do you want to go ahead with your follow-up question, and then I will
Okay.
move to Commissioner Palumbo?
Yeah, this is pretty quick. I guess my question is, would you do everybody every 3 years, or would you put them on a rotating schedule where you'd have like tiers 1 and 2, 1 year would do the full app, the next year would be 3 and 4, the next year would be 5 and 6? Would they be on a rotation like that so that you're kind of spreading out the work, or is the vision that everybody would happen in the same year?
Everybody would do it in the same year. And the reason for that is because so many people change tiers. And so if you were in tier 4 in 2026, and then the next year would have been your year, you would have to go 2 years in a row. It's also a lot of the work on, this really only alleviates the work enough. We do it, all at once, but it is a fair ask. I think as of right now, we would do 2026 would be a COP1 year, and then the next one would be 2029.
Commissioner Palumbo?
Thank you. I'm all about alleviating the workload. Absolutely. In regards to the second bolded row, organizations at lower tiers are capping out. When we had the issue with the women's chorus and they were about $5,000 shy of being in the tier, would this work in reverse? Because I have heard from an organization that, they happen to do good in 1 year, they do better, but only by a couple of thousand or 5,000, and all of a sudden they're into a whole new tier. Would we be able to work with those organizations if they just, go a couple of thousand over, and that puts them into a new tier? So that's one question. And then I would also be concerned about the accountability, because as we found out with Orchestra of New Spain, there are other organizations who aren't even living up to the monthly commitments, getting their reports on time, et cetera, et cetera. So I just really, really would want to make sure that they're not seeing this, organizations aren't seeing this as a pass and, there wasn't a lot of emphasis placed before, we got by, so we'll be okay. And if we're going to really drop anyone from the program or give them a hard, firm deadline, then we are all committed to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Palumbo. Commissioner Chisholm?
So a couple of things. One, Glenn, have you and the team run the 3-year by the attorneys at all?
no, we are in our nation stage or whatever. We're in the beginning stages of sort of running this through. And our first step is really to see how y'all, that temperature litmus test with y'all.
Okay. Yeah, because before we spend too much time, diving into this, I'd really like to see one, even if we can do it.
Well, administratively, per cultural policy, right, we have to pass guidelines every year, so we'll still do that, right? We'll just make it clear in that first year, hey, we're starting a new 3-year cycle, and then as the second year comes up, hey, we are in our second of our 3-year cycle, and here's where we're lying through. And then for the third year, we are in our third year of a 3-year cycle. And so we still send those through, council still sees those, which includes attorney review. But we do have precedent for this. We have done a multi-year COP program before, pre-cultural plan. It was a 2-year program, but it was still a multi-year in that sense.
Okay, great. Then my second statement is something that I hope we can really address is just I don't even know the right way to say this, but starting each funding year, starting off clean. Just because you got $70,000 last year doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get $70,000 this year. If you scored lower than your other people in the category. We ran into this year where there were several organizations that scored much lower, but yet got a higher percentage of their budget than others. And I guess it's not. Let me correct that. It's not the dollar amount; it's the percentage of budget. And to me, that it just doesn't seem very equitable when we have a scoring system down, but yet we don't really stick to it insofar as what we give them because we've set precedent of what they got the year before. Does that make sense? I know Julia and I have talked a little bit about this.
It does, Commissioner Trizell, and it's something, we've been working on in this committee for several years, probably even before I joined the committee when it was just, when the original committee members that are still on the committee reviewing Commissioner Hornhofer. And that whole focus on percentage of budget is a relatively new thing in the last couple of years to try to address that. I always struggle with what the right word is because it's not inequity, but that disconnect between score and award. And certainly if you're kicking off a new way of doing things, that is an opportune time to look at that. Although that's going to take some very deep work. I think what we are going to want from you as a commission, as a committee, and then reporting to the commission, that's going to take some really long-term planning so that we don't, while I'm sensitive to the organization shouldn't receive an award for sport as a merit, I'm also sensitive to not wanting to be the city, not wanting the city funding programming to be the reason any particular organization closes, even though the underlying reason would be their failure to score properly, but that's going to be a balance. I will do this second round of questions, but I'd like to jump in first and ask this question. With the multi-year approach, would that mean that new organizations could only come into the program every 3 years? Or would you allow new organizations to come in years 2 and 3? And if the answer to that is no, they could come in every year. Would they then come in as a year 2 so that you're just doing this big project every 3 years, like the 26 and 29? Or would there be some organizations that run on a rotating schedule? Because I can see a real problem if you're making decisions about 3 organizations in years 27 and 30, 40 organizations. So.
Yeah, we talked about this already. This is like all part of the process. This is all part of the process of us running kind of this scenario over and over and over again and finding kinks and flaws or barriers of entry in this particular case. And so, yeah, we would have a process in this first year, quote unquote, or when we publish the second year of guidelines for new applicants in order to come to the program. The idea would be we would find a way to, if they qualified, to roll them into the program, but their timeline would then realign with everyone else's. So if they came in if they came in the second year, 2 more, they would still be year 2 for them, right? And then, but if they came in the 3rd year, the following year, they're gonna have to read the whole thing again. And so that is, I mean, easier said, we still need to like figure out what all that would look like, but yes, that is part of our consideration.
We're going to go back around one more time, and then in light of the time, I'm going to ask after this second round of questions, that we move on the agenda, and that as you have time to digest this and think about it, you share your thoughts with the office staff via email. And again, just a reminder, just from you to the office staff, not to the committee as a group. Commissioner Spelcy.
Thanks. I was actually going to ask the same question you just asked about, to me though, if we're letting groups in every single year, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose? Because then they're going to have to do the full application to get in. At least I would think they would. So then I don't know. That's just something to think about. I think you may also think about doing a rotation so that you've got some different tiers doing the full app in different years, so it kind of spreads the workload around. And if a group does move tier to tier, that may just put them on a different schedule at that point. You know, they may have to do one twice in a row or what, I don't know. Just something to think about. But I guess, yeah, that would be my main question. If they are doing it only every 3 years, new organizations, does that mean on the off years they wouldn't have to do the full app? In which case I would kind of have some issues with that because they wouldn't have any kind of panel score or Q&A or anything like that to for entry into the program.
Thank you, Commissioner Spellacy. Commissioner Holomo, I was about to skip you, but since you got back to your chair, you are next.
Thanks. Well, I just want to go back to the first question. I didn't hear anything about if tiers who are just a few thousand over and it puts them into another tier, are we going to be able to be flexible with them because they may slip back down to another tier the third year?
We haven't ever made cuts from people that have gone up a tier, right? So they've at least been guaranteed usually the same funding that they got the year before. So we do ask them to go in the new tier, even if it's just by a few $1,000s, because these tiers are pretty large as it is. So an organization there's a big difference of what an organization can and should be able to do with their resources that has 200, even if it's $55,000 versus 75. If we were cutting organizations as they move up, I think that would be, as we are when organizations move down, I think that might be a different thing. But because we're not making state funding cuts, we have not made that adjustment. The tier folks moving up a tier by a few thousand.
Mr. Gisela.
Just one final thought on starting fresh from the funding standpoint. I think Austin or Houston does this every year, where they start new every year. But it might give an opportunity for more compliance, because right now, as we've seen, when an organization doesn't comply, they're not necessarily penalized much year after year. And this could be a way for them to get their paperwork in every month, knowing that they're going to be scored and their funds depend on them. But I agree with you, Chairwoman, that we don't want to be the catalyst for an organization failing. But at the same time, I have a hard time funding organizations that don't comply when you have organizations that do every single thing right.
So just to kind of wrap up where we are, it sounds like there is not strong opposition to the office bringing us a plan, considering something other than just the process that we go through right now. I think that's what I'm hearing from all of the comments. I think we're also hearing that there's clearly a lot of work and thought that will need to go into the plan. And as I understand it, you guys are bringing that to us with the thought of maybe moving toward that in 2026, but not as a guideline that we would be kicking off next year, or are you looking at it as something we'd be kicking off next year? Okay, so since they're looking at something we'd be kicking off in this next cycle, we will have a lot of work to do. So having said that, what's our timeline, Julia, on the guidelines? When do we have it? Well, I know we're gonna have, can you just give us briefly before we move on to that?
Yeah, we'll have discussion in November, we'll have discussion in December, and we will vote on those guideline changes in December. Because they go to city council.
But that's commission. No, commission. So our committee, we're the committee that meets the month, but nobody else meets. Okay. So we will have the opportunity to discuss in November, and in December, we will need to vote by January for it to go to commission in January for us to stay on track, which means I think that if we're really talking, I just want to bring this discussion forward now, because if we're talking about big changes that are going to take a lot of discussion, we might need either an extra meeting or a long meeting. And of course, an extra meeting in November is complex as we move into the holiday season. So I just might ask that everybody take a look at your calendars for the November meeting and see what room you have for a little bit of an extended meeting, because just based upon how the conversation has gone with respect to the preliminary information, will we be doing both COP and Arts Activate guidance? So we have two sets of guidance. So a couple of things I want to say as your chair. First of all, please don't sit on this in the month of October. If you take some time to adjust what the office has given us, and let's get those really thoughtful, important comments into the office now, because it is going to become more complicated to address those things as we move forward in November and December. So, so please don't sit on this if you are feeling like you have things that you want to share related to items. Chair?
Yes. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Not only.
We can't hear you.
Strong request that everyone go ahead and ask a question. Also, kind of give a deadline of comments, may be reserved, or don't make it by a certain time, and let people know. Been briefed on it, I think. Yes,
You're breaking in and out.
I would say, so I'm gonna ask you this question. If you have comments or thoughts that you want Julia and the staff to take into account before the November meeting, please have them to Julia by a week before that meeting. A week before that meeting. If you send, it doesn't mean you can't send her comments afterwards, but if you send her your thoughts the day before the November meeting, do not come to that meeting expecting those thoughts or suggestions to be addressed. Now, we still will have the December meeting and we'll have the January meeting, but let's be mindful that once we get something to the office, then they have a lot of work to do with that. Commissioner Palumbo, did you have something to add to that?
Question, procedural. The next item that we see, is it going to be the Word document that's the COP guidelines? And will it have the old way it was versus where the new part will go in?
I think the next thing that you see in November will probably be another PowerPoint with a lot of details hashed out. But if you're, but for December, yeah, absolutely, you can have a red line copy with track changes. Sure.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask that you guys talk about that, the two of you. I don't want to ask you to do something you can't do, but I also want to remind you how this committee works. And if you give us the very first copy of the guidelines on December 1st, right, as we go into the holidays, you do not have an allocations committee that is going to just go, oh, the office staff, it's probably good, we'll vote on it. What is going to happen, but you also are going to be sending it to us between, kind of Thanksgiving right before the December meeting. And I think you could end up with we could end up with a time crunch.
Yeah.
Now, it may also be a time crunch, particularly since we have not been talking about this loudly, and I don't want to make any announcements. Julie, do you want to make this announcement?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, so we have a lot of time constraints to think about. So just, you guys talk about it and see if that makes sense, because I know how this committee works. And you guys, I'm the world's worst. I get it in on a Tuesday. I don't have time to look at it till Friday. We're going to be moving pretty fast. We're always moving pretty fast with guidelines. We usually are not making very big changes. So if we are likely to go to commission with a big change for the coming year, we're all going to have to kind of do a quick turnaround. So let's just stay in communication with the office, with each other, with the office, and our communications with each other regarding this matter do need to be limited to our open public meetings. I keep trying to get ahead of the agenda, and Julia is making me stay in order. So if it's okay with everybody, nobody has anything else burning that they want to add right now, I'd like to pass the microphone back to Julia to move on to our next agenda item.
Okay, we're gonna fly through the last two, but I really want to let you celebrate with it, Sal. She has some really cool things to share with you on culture value.
Can everybody hear me?
Mhm.
So yes, I'm just gonna try to go through this quickly, but we just closed out and finished closing out the cultural value funding program. We ran 2 cultural values, and one was funded by the NJA and supported 66 artists. And then we funded one by the OAC and supported 34 artists. And as you know, this was a very fast and efficient one-time, one-day event micro grant. We worked with the library and Parks and Rec departments to match project with size, and that was really helpful for all artists because they did not need insurance most of the time, and it was very speedy to go through the risk assessment and everything else. We also did marketing, and that really helped the artists because we did it collectively. We provided. This is some cool pictures from some of the different projects that we had. We had anything from music, art, dance, and we worked with kids and adults, and we had very positive feedback to the people that went and enjoyed these. One of the things that we did was we asked everybody in their final report that this was a pilot program and what can we do better next year. And we received responses that talked about how it was very helpful to have marketing, but they hoped that they could have more time to market the event. We also received comments about how they hoped that there was better communication between them and the venues. And also that they were overall very happy and that this helped them focus on the delivery of the program. And they are very much looking forward to next year's. We supported 34 Alana artists and organizations, 35% of which were new to OAC programs, not only new winners, but also first-time applicants. So most of them, so that's very exciting. This program was very fast-paced for the artists, the organizations, the TPL, and the art teams. And what we can do differently is that we are going to ask for mandatory valuable libraries and Parks and Recs team orientations, just to address that better communication between the venues and the vendors. We know that marketing takes time, so we want to continue to have 45-week program work, but to open contracts 3 weeks prior to the start of the TAB month, will allow more time for the marketing to start. Also, want to provide the opportunity for funded projects to share specific pictures or graphics for a great personalized campaign and share ahead. This year, the forms were composed of OAC, Dallas Public Libraries, and Parks and Rec staff. Next year, we might open up to our arts panelists, and we're also going to focus on receiving more comments and asking everybody to comment on the application. Great.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the next item, I just want to remind everybody, culture of value was Glenn's baby before he left OAC misguidedly. We have that program because, if I recall correctly, the NEA grant, is that NEA or was it?
It was originally funded through our Arts Endowment Fund.
Arts Endowment, something like that, yes. So we had some extra money, and Glenn came up with this idea in line with the repeated goal of this committee in particular, the commissioner as a whole, to fund as many Dallas artists as possible. So I wanted to give you a shout out to Glenn, because I remember when that program first started, and it's really, I know you have to be super proud of it, because it's really, really grown. And it is a perfect example of how what appears to be a small idea that you think you're only going to get to do once can actually become a permanent project of the city. So thanks. Okay, Julia, staff up.
Okay, we have lots to celebrate today, including, I know property. We have a new funding team staff member that you will get to see starting next meeting. Catherine Haskell started yesterday. She has hit the ground running with us. She brings a really extensive background in arts, nonprofit management, education. She is the loveliest person to talk to, and I look forward to introducing her to you. She will work on our team primarily with organizations in Arts Activate. So everything from recruiting them to getting them all the way through. She will partner with Kayla, who will be continuing her work with individual artists. And Excel will continue to be her person for culture and value. So we are finally fully staffed on this team. Yeah. And Catherine, listed below if you'd like to send in your own. Okay, your calendar for the end of this year is up here. If you have any folks that you know are interested in Arts Activate, we will have 4 more information sessions, 2 are virtual, 2 are in person. That information is on our website. Round 2 is going to close on October 21st. Also going to be a busy day. It will be a busy day for us because we are doing a QMAC that morning at 9 a.m. 2 days later, we will go to City Council at 9 a.m. If you would like to go to those, the City of Dallas bit.ly is on the Legislature website. November 7th will be a continued conversation about guidelines. December 5th. We are the committee that meets in December because we have to vote on round 2 Arts Activate. Sounds like we may want to push voting on guidelines changes for Arts Activate and COP until January, which is fine by me. That said, I will not be there. I will be on leave and very likely to miss December, January, and February allocations meetings. I will miss you, but going on maternity leave with my little girl. So while I'm gone, Manuel is going to be in charge of everything ACAC. Glenn will be your person. COP, and for anything else, funding programs in Dallas.gov. I will leave full drafts, all of Arts Activate and COP guidelines before I go, like 3 different versions of them. But have complete and total faith in this course. And I'll look forward to seeing you again. That's just the opinion. If anybody was curious about what we changed last year for Arts Activate, this was the slide in our October meeting last year. And then I marked, did we do that? So these are the changes, just if you want to see the guidance changes we made last year. Here they are. Cool. We did it. 5:58.
We have any, we can take very brief comments or questions. Anyone? Great.
Just congratulations.
Oh, we have one more thing we're celebrating too. It's Glenn's birthday tomorrow. So we have so much to celebrate. So if you're in person, there's my face over there. And if you're not in person, oh, and Catherine is on the screen. Hi, Catherine. Everybody, this is Catherine. So delighted to have you here in person. I had also see in future meetings. Or should I?
Congratulations to Julia. Happy birthday, Glenn. Thank you to all of the staff and committee members for very good work. All business of this committee being concluded, I call it to a close at 5:59 p.m. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks at the commission meeting.
Bye, guys.
That one's not so small.